Thank you very much, guys, for coming along. This is the first kind of curious kind of standalone session of the year. We're obviously having a couple of specials here, there, and everywhere. But thank you very much for coming along on your Thursday morning. I know it's very difficult. Everyone's incredibly busy, so I really value you guys coming along to these kind of sessions. It's incredibly important for us to kind of understand what's going on and understand these kind of new and challenge ourselves. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of an overview of kind of CES, what happened this year. If you have seen previous talks, I've done this for the last couple of years. If you've not by now had enough of my emails, I'm Will Harvey, I'm Innovation Lead for the VCCP. I sit across the entire partnership. And my role is to help you guys push the boundaries of what's possible with our clients. Every year I go off to CES. So if you don't know what CES is, CES is the largest consumer electronics show, and it showcases all the technology that's going to really be popular in people's homes over the next 6 to 12 months. It's a great way for us to really get a steer about these emerging technologies and how they're actually kind of fitting into people's lifestyles. We talk a lot about kind of the tech for tech's sake, but I think CES is a great way to get a steer about what's happening with these things and are people really adopting, or is it merely just a bit of hype? This is my 7th year doing CES. It's a full-on event. It's 7 days. It happens out in Vegas. But it's a huge conference. It happens every year. Over 190,000 people go out to the desert and they talk about technology and how it's going to be changing society. It's where a lot of the hardware manufacturers really come along and show off their wares and tears about what people are going to be using. And it's a huge conference that's really evolved. Nearly 2.7 million square foot of kind of exhibition space, so there's talks as well as people showing off stands and the kind of greatest area. And what's really quite nice is that we're seeing a lot of kind of startups coming into this environment. Nearly 4,000 exhibitors are now showcasing at CES. I clocked in at around 120,000 steps over the 5 days of the conference, so it's a long week. So I do all the hard work to try and bring together, looking at all these things and all these announcements, and what does it actually mean to you? Why should we give a shit about these things? And is it really going beyond the hype, and is it being adopted? So there's 5 things I'm going to take you guys through today. We are going to share this deck at a later point, so if you want to know a little bit more, I'm more than happy to sit down with your teams, with your clients, to really kind of think about what this means individually for you all. So I'm just going to kind of get started, and hopefully there's some moments today that make you go whoa and kind of wow, and even though it's the American spelling, I don't agree with that, but anyway, we'll get started with that. Voice. There's been a lot of talk around voice over the last kind of 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. These voice assistants are becoming more and more popular. Everything from Amazon Alexa to Google in their home, and Apple bringing out their own HomePod last week. It's really becoming something that's being adopted. And there is a real power behind voice. Smart assistants are being baked into various different products. We're seeing nearly 1 in 6 adults in the States have a kind of smart speaker of some sort in their home. This last Christmas period, Alexa, Amazon Echo Dot, the small one, was one of the most popular gifts for families in most markets, at least in the adopted kind of world. And what we're seeing is that these devices are 4.3 million devices that are kind of smart assistants are expected to be shipped in this year alone. And what's interesting is that 39 million Americans now have voice assistants in their home. And what that means is that it's actually outpacing both the smartphone and the tablet adoption rate. So it's being adopted much quicker than the devices that really shook up this space, and we're only seeing the beginning of what's going to be possible with voice. Before it was very much kind of, it's learning as it goes, and it's really started to evolve and get more sophisticated. What voice assistants can do in the kind of first year was very much play a certain track, but now we can get it to be used as something more of a strategy in a way that consumers can control various objects around their homes. This year there was a battle of the kind of big two. So we had Amazon with their kind of showcase of 2 years ahead of most of the other competitors, and then Google pushing very hard with their Google Home space. It was a real battle of the smart speakers across the entire show floor and across the various talks that I went to. And it seemed like every new product that was announced had some form of smart system that was being baked into it. If you saw my talk last year, Alexa really was the talk of the town for CES. And we saw a number of partnerships with people like Ford, Samsung, LG, baking in the smart assistants into your fridge so it knows what products you've got, it can remind you. It's a kind of always-on companion. What happened this year is Amazon now already own 2/3 of the smart speaker market, so they've got real competitive edge. So to kind of combat that is Google really took over this year. Google made a big splash. Pretty much any bloody surface in CES this year, there was a Hey Google brand all over it. And they're really trying to drill in the partnerships that they have with manufacturers and really push quite hard in this space that a lot of the big manufacturers are looking at which one they should back and which horses they're kind of like smart assistant to be involved with. What was interesting as well, they even set up like soundproof pods at various stands across the whole kind of show floor, which meant they had smart assistants in there, so you could go into this pod and have an interaction with a smart assistant if you hadn't had one before. But it also means that you don't have that problem where you have all that ambient noise, where lots of people are making noise on the show floor. It really worked quite hard this year to kind of push Google Home. But what I've noticed really is that we're seeing a lot of these products are kind of being really adopting this ambient computing term, which is a concept that really is a layer of intelligence being baked across everything in our homes. As we start to have more smart light bulbs, we control our heating, everything from our lights to our thermostats. A lot of these hardware manufacturers are supporting smart systems, so it means you don't have to make a choice of what product you buy. It means that depending on what your household is, if you're an Alexa household or a Google household, you can be able to have a whole plethora of products that you can be able to buy into. Now they were baking it into a number of products that were quite interesting, everything from little cookers that you could see navigation, so you can be able to control your navigation system with speech. Smart mirrors is one to keep an eye on as well at the moment. Light bulbs, Bose did a partnership with them, so with their wireless headphones you can be able to have a smart assistant on the go. But there is always a problem with things like this, is that just because you can doesn't mean you should. There was even an Alexa controlled toilet. I don't think that's really going to be adopted into the mainstream, but it's just interesting to see that a lot of these guys are really trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. I don't think people are going to want to tell their toilet to flush. But on a serious note, from that kind of emerging trend of voice, what we're starting to see is both a kind of a partnership of both voice and visual. Because we were told originally when Alexa first came out, Google came to the market, they were these devices that were just a speaker. And it's very difficult to have a long-form communication with these devices because you wouldn't want to sit there for it to give you a whole report of what was going on. What we're seeing is they're actually putting displays into these smart assistants now. Amazon started doing it with the Amazon Spot, and Google announced a massive partnership with Lenovo this year, where they're actually using things like visual cards to be able to enhance the experience. So I can be able to ask Alexa, what's the weather like today, and it will then push a little card to my mobile that I can have a look at whilst I'm on the go. So they're really thinking about how this evolves now beyond just the use of voice, because I think consumers really like to have that tactile, graphical user interface feedback to them. The second kind of area is something that's been a real growing space within CES, at least over the last 7 years that I've been going to it. A lot of auto manufacturers and car creators are really coming to CES now, and it's kind of an interesting move for them to do that because it is the week before the kind of Boston Auto Show. They actually come to CES to kind of experiment and see what's possible. And we're seeing it's one of the largest growing spaces within CES, the kind of auto, transport and cars. They take over one of the main halls at the moment. We kind of, there's a lot of discussion and talk around this kind of future of transportation, a lot of talk about automation and people being in driverless cars, and we were kind of told that this was a kind of thing of science fiction, but it's grounded, and the reason why people are driving this is that, pun intended, is that there is a massive impact that if we can be able to kind of automate our process of driving. 1.2 million people are killed on the road every year. That's an equivalent of a plane dropping out of the sky every hour. That's why they're doing it. It's going to save lives. It's going to dramatically change the way that we interact with oil, the way that we get from A to B, the way that products are brought to us. So it's really a massively growing space, and that's why a lot of the car manufacturers are coming to CES. And it gives you a good steer of what more is likely a 5-10 year thing. You do get the usual, these concept cars, these white boxes, these kind of Blade Runner-esque vehicles that I don't think really going to get anywhere near our streets anytime soon. And then you do get those usual concept cars. But what was interesting this year is that we actually had a lot of vehicles that were road ready. There were 8 different manufacturers that were running road trials this year that you could be able to try a completely autonomous vehicle. Now, there was a guy sitting behind the wheel with his hand on the wheel, hovering over it, just in case, but I actually went on 2 trials whilst I was out there, one with Lyft, which is like Uber, where I ordered a cab to pick me up from the main convention centre. The vehicle pulled up, there was a guy sitting in it, he had his hands above the steering wheel. I put in the destination on my mobile app, and it drove me to one of the 6 different hotels that could do drop-off points, and it navigated various complicated roads. So they're running trials right now. This technology is really speeding up right now, and there's a lot of companies trying to move into this space. And even talk about what we're going to do in these vehicles as they become more and more autonomous. Some of you may even have a car which has got like self-park assist. It's kind of moving that stage on, and it's a real fascinating area. One of the big companies that made a splash on the first day of CES is a company called Byton. Byton has actually been set up by a series of veterans from BMW that really wanted to disrupt the auto kind of driverless environment, and also take on the likes of Tesla, which are trying to who are leading this space right now. If the founders kind of pull it off, they are looking to be able to passengers will no longer need to reach for their devices, either smartphones or tablets. They're looking at how people are going to be using this new environment in a whole new way. So if they have on the dashboard a massive display that stretches all the way across, it has facial recognition in the steering wheel that it knows who the user is inside of it. It's looking at the entertainment within the vehicle and it being a vessel to get you from A to B. I'd say they're one to keep an eye out for. They are a kind of Chinese based company, but they are making leaps and bounds where a lot of car companies are trying to disrupt this space. And they talked very much about this kind of digital lounge that will be created. This was a really cool startup that I met when I was there. This is RoboArt. What they're looking to do is they're looking to look at grocery shopping in a whole new way, where they've got these automated little vehicles that you will know either it's on a usual route and it carries various fresh fruit and veg, or you can request it and it will turn up to outside your house. You take products out of it, it knows with the cameras inside what products you've removed, and it will charge you out of your basket. It's a bit like the Amazon Go stuff you may have seen, but it's actually where it comes to you, so the convenience is very interesting. They're running trials beginning this summer, I believe, so it's one to keep an eye out for. This is a really interesting concept, and it got a lot of attention this year. This is quite a nice idea. So this is Toyota's e-Palette. And it's a kind of multi-purpose vehicle. So the bottom part of it is completely kind of autonomous, driverless. You can control it without any human form of input. But they're looking at what you can actually do within these environments. So it could be a pizza shop, or it could be a retail store. It could be a remote store that can come and fix your iPhone screen if you smashed it. There's even hotel brands that are talking about using it where there's beds inside. So you can request a bed that arrives up to your house here in London, you get into the bed, press the button, and then you wake up the next day in Manchester because it arrives overnight for you. Interesting, it's quite a fresh, bringing a bit of a fresh idea to the table, what you can do with some space. What's also a nice one is that Ford gave the opening keynote, which is interesting for a car manufacturer to open up CES this year. And what they weren't necessarily showing off lots of technology, but what they were showing off is this kind of concept of a new civic freedom that may be created with this kind of autonomous future that we're going towards, where this kind of living stream, where both our vehicles and the humans and the city itself have a complete kind of understanding of each other and a symbiotic working together relationship. We see a lot of companies talking about the kind of smart cities going forward, but they're looking at creating a language that can work between users and vehicles and the city itself. And looking at the sharing economy. One of the examples they gave was, say for example, a user was inside of a car and they suffered a heart attack. What the car could then do is it could then pull over to a safe location. it could then notify the 999 and let an ambulance know that this is happening. The ambulance can then, en route to him, have every single red light blocked, so they have a clear path because the city's completely working together as one single relationship, and get to that end user much quicker. And that's going to potentially save lives. It's a whole new way that people are thinking about redirecting traffic and the environment of people and how we move around our cities. And to kind of end on that area of the kind of change of transport, I'd like you guys to think a little bit about the new communal space that will be created. We see a lot of these kind of concepts where a family will be sitting there and the seats are all inwardly facing, but it's happening. If we're seeing these vehicles where we no longer have to pay attention to the road, there's a whole load of questions that's going to be raised around what impact this is going to have on so many different areas. What impact will it have on out of home, where we no longer be distracted by things on the street? What will Netflix bring out of service potentially to entertain the family? What will people do for entertainment within this new kind of communal space, this new living room that could be created? It's just one to consider and think about. So I'm sure over the last couple of years and various talks I've given, and you guys are very aware of campaigns that we've worked on, that there's a lot of discussion around virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and it's a really interesting environment that it is changing so quickly. Over the last couple of years, we've probably been in meetings about what AR and VR and what role it has for the consumer, and do people really want to have these kind of experiences? One thing I noticed at the show this year is that we're really seeing a maturity of these technologies, where people are understanding the right uses and the wrong uses to use these new ways of immersing the consumer. A term that they seem to be using quite a lot this year is cross-reality, to kind of embargo and bring it all together really about what these different reality experiences are going to be. VR has been incredibly popular. 2017, everyone said it was the year of VR. 20 million headsets are now out there, but the AR space is now catching up quite quickly. A billion smartphones are in people's hands right now, are able to do augmented reality experiences. And we're going to see more and more brands experiment with this space going forwards. And we didn't see a huge number of hardware announcements, but a lot of reassurance that these things aren't going away and they are finding their place in our kind of toolkit for what we can potentially use them for. Vive, who are the kind of leading pioneer in the VR space, announced a standalone VR headset. They were kind of the big VR announcement this year. But it's interesting that the hardware manufacturers are listening to the content creators and the people that are creating these experiences. And this is a completely wireless headset that's standalone. You can have a PC unit that's separate, but it's got integrated headphones, as well as it has cameras outwardly facing, so you can do hand recognition as well. So you can really start creating a bit more of an emotional standpoint by using these technologies. And here are a couple of examples of interesting uses of VR that I saw at the show floor this year. Black Box is a really interesting one. This was a kind of get fit in VR. It's a gym workout in a virtual reality experience. So you sit inside a black box, you wear a VR headset, there are various instruments around you, and you're taking on a story. So one of them is like a mythical creature kind of quest where you've got to go and kill beasts. So you're going for a story whilst you're getting fit at the same time. I don't know how it's going to work against sweaty and being in a box like that. Will it be adopted? I don't know, but it's quite an interesting one to look at how people are using that to entertain the mind whilst you're trying to get fit. Another really interesting startup I met called Timescope. They've made this kind of, those kind of viewing, like Zoom in cities where you can be able to look at far distances away on these viewing goggles. What they've done is they've created one which is a virtual reality one where you can be able to, they're placed in physical locations and you can actually see what the city looked like in the 1950s, 1930s and really transport you to view the history of the city that you're currently in. And it's a standalone unit, you don't need all the mess of cables, and it's quite an interesting one. Now, AR is something that everyone are really experimenting and thinking about what can be possible, and we're going to really see AR outpacing VR this year. I think everyone's attention has moved from VR to AR because of the scale that it can reach to and the kind of consumer experience isn't so much of a kind of standalone insular environment. You can have very much shared experiences as we see the kind of physical digital technology kind of combined together. And the reason why this has happened is that the smartphone manufacturers, the platforms, are providing tools for us to build augmented reality experiences overnight now. Before, it would normally take hundreds of thousands of pounds and specialist skills within developers, but people like Apple and Google and Unity are providing tools that you can, in a way, drag and drop 3D models into digital and create augmented reality apps much quicker than ever before. So this is really going to start a boom of new new experiences people are experimenting with. Three of the ones I really quite like this year. Snappy is an interesting startup that is doing AR messaging. So what you can do is you can record a little video message in a physical location, pin it to the location, and someone else later on can come along, stumble upon that message and see that in the environment. Harvard Business Review have actually published a report at the end of last year. Now, if Harvard Business Review do a kind of report on how organisations can embrace AR, it's something that's really not going to be going away anytime soon. And if you want a copy of that, I'm happy to share that around. It's a very, very good read and a good kind of stepping stone to get people thinking. And then the last one was augmented reality brushing your teeth. What's interesting is that it was a Samsung startup that they've supported, and what it is it helps kids learn hygiene techniques of brushing their teeth whilst gamifying it. So they learn whilst doing something good, and it's quite a nice simple use of that, making it fun and play, a process that's normally quite an arduous process to try and get kids to do. And to kind of finish off in this kind of reality section, I don't know if you guys have seen this, I've shown it a couple of times. This is the hyper reality kind of concept video that was done about 2-3 years ago, kind of warning us off about what might happen as we kind of go into this Blade Runner-esque VR, AR, mixed reality experiences and the kind of cramming of information into the physical space. But what is true is that 30% of people are more effective when data is displayed in context. And what that means is that we're going to see potential rise of kind of headsets and head-mounted kind of AR experiences. Smart glasses is still a little way off. It's been 5 years since Google Glass kind of began and failed in the market. I think we learned a lot from that time, but we're seeing a real rise of startups bringing these kind of glasses that kind of fit into the everyday lifestyle. A lot of them are trying to make it a little bit more fashionable, not necessarily the Magic Leap ones which were announced at the end of last year, but the guys from Vuix is making ones that actually have an Alexa baked into it. So I could say, Alexa, show me my nearest coffee shop, and it will display a digital arrow to the nearest coffee shop for me. Where we can have this kind of, would we and should we kind of have these augmented experiences that can kind of get in the way and become a bit of a barrier? I think that's a discussion that will continue going on around, will people really want to have these smart glasses? But it's a race that everyone's trying to get involved with right now. Expect Apple to potentially make a move into this space probably in the next 2 years. And the kind of takeaway of that section is about, we're seeing this kind of evolution of these VR and AR experiences. If any of you have tried or are aware of The Void is an incubated company at Disney that do kind of haptic and sensory feedback VR experiences. They've currently got an installation over at the Westfield, not Stratford, but the other one, where you can basically go on a Star Wars experience where there's like heat and smell and touch, and you work your way around a physical kind of escape room whilst having a VR headset on. And this has been incredibly popular, looking at sensory and haptic feedback beyond just a visual experience, but something as a sensory experience. So one of the last kind of big trends that we notice is the ongoing kind of discussion around digital health. This term, digital therapeutics, is a term that I picked up a number of times across the conference, which is, as we're seeing these emerging technologies fueling a new behaviour and trend with consumers, digital therapeutics is the treatment, let me get this right, and they're utilising digital and often internet-based health technologies to spur change in patient behaviour. If you look at like the increase of things like companies doing like well-being and mindfulness, this is kind of fueling the beginning of this taking control back and having access to this information that we haven't had before. And what it means is people are getting ready to get well. They are wanting to take control back of this health and the lifestyle that they lead. as we start to put more and more sensors around our body, whether it's wearables or fitness trackers or smart shoes or whatever you have, people are getting more and more data and information on our daily lives, and it means that we can make better decisions in our lives. As well as the applications that we put on our devices, we continue to download, there's an app for that, for different parts of being able to make yourself more aware, and software is really becoming a medicine for people to take control in that space. And how this is happening is in three kind of prongs that I picked up this year. One is kind of enhancing digital existing traditional medical processes. So if you think about things like remote doctors, if any of you have seen the stuff that the NHS have been doing where you can remotely log in to see your GP, this is really fascinating because it's going to disrupt a very traditional process where before I would have to book an appointment 2-3 weeks, I'd have to try and find their availability, my availability. With this, they're really utilising the doctor's time as well as the patient time to be able to drop in and basically just Skype your doctor or your GP. This is having a massive effect, and the NHS are putting a lot into that area right now, I'm aware of. And it's really looking at how digital is going to impact, technology is going to impact our health. The second one is about encouraging behaviour change. If any of you have got smartwatches or kind of various wearables, a lot of them are about encouraging you to make little changes, little nudges to make changes in our lifestyle to live it longer. So things like reminding you to stand, or reminding that you need to go for a bit of a walk, or reminding that you've forgotten your medicine. We're seeing these little behaviour changes are really becoming a key part of it. And then the last area is really where it's actually serving as a direct standalone therapy, a form of medicine or a therapy, where you can give you as the end user the tools to actually change your life and actually control it a little bit more yourself. And what this was kind of came through on, this was a talk that was done by CNET around the idea of the invisible doctor. And what's happening is that we're seeing this kind of cross between like devices, data, algorithms and service design, where people are getting a lot more choice and control over their health and their lifestyle. Inspiring a future where personal tech and health tech really kind of start to come together a little bit. And it can even spot patterns in behaviours or spotting things that we aren't even looking for and help flag those at an early stage. An example of this, they showed two interesting pieces of technology. One, which is LifeCore, which is an EKG monitoring strap to go on your Apple Watch. And the other one is a Dexcom, which is a kind of glucose monitor that's a wearable that continuously monitors your glucose level and reminds you to be able to take it, and even notifies family members if it's an alarming rate, if you need to be able to get medical assistance remotely. It's a really fascinating area, and this is really starting a lot of companies moving. It's the beginning of a boom, this kind of health tech space where people are having these devices that are really doing something a little bit more meaningful than cluttering our lives. One of the two I'll draw your attention to, which is quite nice, one which is Capsulin, which is a little kind of attachment that goes onto your insulin pen, and it monitors and measures what your doses are throughout the day, and it means you can keep a digital record on an existing more analog device, so you can be able to understand if there needs to be something changed or moved. It's kind of remotely controls via your phone, and you can then, with that data and information, make better life decisions on how you should be treating yourself. The other one is Lumini, which is another startup by Samsung, which is a skincare. So it's a little monitor, it's a kind of camera. You can take a picture of your skin, it analyses the quality through detection of light and kind of transparency of our skin, and it can even recommend products to be able to make changes that may be better for you. It can tie kind of facial recognition and skin recommendations. And the reason, one of the other areas, just to finish on within the health area, is this, and we're seeing a real growth of kind of identity and authentication. So like the new iPhones with its facial recognition, we're going to see a number of hardware manufacturers supporting things. If you've got an iPhone in the last couple of years, biometrics is now being adopted. It's something that we don't even think about when we unlock our devices. It becomes so natural for us. So we're seeing them using things like biometrics in lots of other ways with fingerprint scanners. Vivo made a huge splash at CES this year. They are the first manufacturer in the world to be able to put a fingerprint scanner underneath a display. So it means the form function of our devices can fundamentally change to a kind of completely screen-based. And they are going to really be leading the way, and it's one to keep an eye out for. They are the world's first on that. Benji Locker, an interesting startup that they were on the equivalent of Dragon's Den in the States. and they've got a kind of traditional lock that you can unlock using your fingerprint scanner. You can even get and have multiple people that have access to that, as well as a traditional key. And then Byton, who I was talking about earlier, has facial recognition to customise the seat depending on your personal preference. And the kind of takeaway of that section is really the value of the data and the safety around the data. As we kind of continuously live in this kind of data breach world where there's another hack or another announcement where something in our information is being stolen. This is such personal information about the data of our health and our well-being. We need to really be very conscious, and the health sector is very cautious around this area, and they need to be, because it is something very intimate and very meaningful to people, where people want to really take back the control of their data, and what is the value of that data. We're going to see a lot of change, I think, this year in this space. To kind of end off on, if you've seen my talks at the end of things like this, I normally try and do the best of the rest kind of stuff. This is a selection of really interesting companies that I saw this year. It's very difficult to cover the whole conference in just a couple of points, but these are things that really stood out to me that made me kind of go wow. So I've kind of pulled together the best of the rest. This, very quickly, this is Zero Mass Water. They are a company that is using solar panels that actually absorb the moisture from the air and actually then kick out pure water. So you don't need plumbing, you don't need electricity, they just plot these solar panels in the middle locations, it absorbs the moisture in the air and then it kicks out pure water. No infrastructure needed. That can be fundamentally huge to a number of different spaces, and they were spoken about across a number of renewability initiatives this year. This one blew my mind a little bit, I'm still trying to get my head around it. This is kind of true wireless power. YCharge won the Best of CES kind of award for smart energy. What it is it's transferring electricity via light. So this is a light bulb at the top here, and this is transferring electricity via the direct light using infrared to these two trains that go around the track. That can fundamentally change. Imagine if every single one of these lights in here could be charging our devices in our pockets as we go. They've just had FDA approval, and we're going to see a lot of stuff around wireless charging beyond just putting our phones or devices on charging pads. And my one more thing section is about the rise of robots. There was always a lot of interesting robotic stuff at CES. This one got in the press quite a lot. This is a robot that can play table tennis. So Omron, which is basically a table tennis king, so he's going to serve now. And it uses things like robotic arms as well as artificial intelligence and machine vision to recognise where the ball is going, moving the arm and then responding back to the human. The good thing is the human still wins, which means we've still got a little bit of an advantage over them, which is great. If any of you guys remember IBO, IBO was released by Sony back in 1999. They've kind of done a researched version, or a refreshed version, sorry, where they're baking in kind of AI and personal intelligence into these kind of personal companions that recognises individual users. It actually builds a relationship with you individually over time, and it really is an interesting way that people are using technology for replacing animals. I don't know if people really want to do that though, but it's a very interesting, and after spending about 10 minutes with it, you get quite emotionally attached to it. It's very bizarre with the eyes, the Disney-esque big eyes and the kind of wagging tail, and the reaction when you touch it is very bizarre. And my last slide, this may make you laugh, but it's something that really was my kind of takeaway moment from CES this year. This is my special athlete duck. It won the Best of CES. And it's a plush social robot being used for comforting. It's a comforting companion for children with cancer. With lifelike movements like quacking and nuzzling and dancing, it's being used as therapeutic play to help kids understand and cope with illnesses. And it's really quite inspiring. I advise going and check these guys out. They're really trying to kind of do what a lot of companies are trying to do, is a real maturity of using technology for emotional and meaningful interactions. So that's kind of my whistle-stop short tour of everything at CES. There is so much more that I'm happy to chat to you guys about at a later point. We're going to publish this as a report around the agency. We filmed it as well for people that want to share it with other teams that weren't able to make it. So that's it. Thank you very much.